Excel is great at building applications, but what about when we want to automate the order in which users move from cell to cell? It can be quite complex, if not impossible, but not anymore. Today, I'm going to share with you a revolutionary new process that allows users to tab from any cell to any cell on any sheet. And we're going to do it with just a few lines of code, even if you've never programmed VBA before. It's going to be a great training. I cannot wait. So let's get started. All right, thank you so much for joining me. Super excited to bring you this training because I'm going to show you how you can easily tab from cell to cell in any order you want. And we're going to do it quickly and easily. And that means regardless of any sheet you want. So users can quickly and easily automatically tab from cell to cell, and we can guide exactly which cell that is using a very, very simple coding. In fact, we're going to be able to put that entire order inside. So we can map it out in any sheet, and then we can do any cell order. So we're going to go over that right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this sheet and we're going to get started. If you do want this template, in fact, this entire employee manager application is fully functional. I created this training a few weeks ago, but now we're simply just going to focus on the individual tab order in which we can do that. So we'll be getting to that. If you want to download this, you look for the link in the description of the YouTube video or on my website. Just look for the word download and we'll get this sent right over to you. All right, I've now cleared out the code and we can see now we tab pretty much in the normal order, which is not specific to our entries. So we really don't want to have this in an application. We want to really guide the user to only those editable cells. So we can do that with an automated tab order. So the best way to do that, of course, is with VBA. VBA is a powerful language. It's going to let us do that. So we're going to get right into it. Now, the idea is simply if you have multiple sheets and you want to control or guide the tab order on any of those sheets, all we need to do is list the sheet name in a table and then list the order that which we want. So all we need is the cell address in whatever order that we want. And as soon as they get to the end, it's going to go back to the beginning. So for example, in our test sheet, we have E5, G5, I5, E7, G7, I7. So if we look in our test sheet, that's it. E5, G5, I5, and then E7, G7, and then I7. So that's the order that we want. We want to guide the user. Or on our employee manager, we've got a host. We've got a range here, and we've got a range here that we want to guide the user to select. So that's exactly what I've already mapped out in the admin. So what we want to do is we want to figure out what sheet the employee is on. And we also want to see if they're within that range. So if the user makes a selection in a range that's outside, then we don't really want anything to happen. But if they do make a selection inside one of these ranges, then we want to automate the tab order. So that's how we're going to do that. We're going to first define the range that they're selected. If it's in our selected range, then we're going to automate the tab order. Otherwise, we're going to exit out. And we're going to do that with just a little bit of VBA. So let's go ahead and get into that right now. And we're going to do that through the Developers tab. Now, if you don't have the Developers tab visible, all you need to do is right click and then click Customize the ribbon. Once you customize the ribbon, we want to make sure that we have the developers selected. Once it's selected, it will then become visible and you can get into the VBA. You can also use a shortcut, Alt F11, or we can just click Visual Basic right here. Now, once we have that, I've got some code here that's from the previous training, which is for our employee manager. But right now, we're just going to focus on the tab order. And to do that, what we want to do is we want to do a brand new module. So I'm going to select Insert here and then Module. And we also want to give it a name so that we know what code is inside it. So I'm going to go into the properties, F4 is a shortcut, and I'm just going to call this tabbing macros. So now we've got the name of them. We can close this out. So the first thing what we want to do is we want to determine whether we are within one of those ranges or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a macro called sub, and then we're going to call it manage tab. Now, basically what I want to do is I want to turn the automatic tabbing on or off. So if it's on, if the user has inside one of these, it's on, and if it's outside, it's off. So basically I want a Boolean state. So it's going to be true or false. So we're going to use here by val, and then we're going to use the state. So that state's going to either be true or false as Boolean. Now Boolean is a true or false variable. So if we see here something like state equals, we're going to see the option true or false. So we know it is a true or false. And basically we want to determine if the user has selected inside a range, then we are going to set that as our automated tab order. So let's put a little note here. We're going to call this turn custom tab behavior on or off. Okay, so basically we're just turning it on or off here. Now, if the state, now this means true, if the state then is true, what do we want to do when it's true? And I'm going to use end if, and then I'm going to use an else so that we can close out completely. So if it is true, then what do I want to do? I want to set the application on key. So I want to program the tab key. So the tab key, we're going to use the curly bracket for that. And then on capitals, we're going to use the tab. So that is the tab and then end quotation. So there, when the user selects that, what do we want to do? I want to run a macro, and that macro is going to be called next cell. We're going to build that macro after that. So basically, when they use the tab, we want them to perform a certain action called next cell. But also, let's go ahead and do the return key as well, also known as the enter. So once again, I'm going to do application on key. So I'm going to copy that. But this time we're going to use the enter, and that's also known as the tilde. So we can set the tilde, which is our enter key. And also on that, I also want to run next cell. So we're going to run the same macro, whether they enter or whether they use tab. That means both enter and tab will work to automate the tab order. So either one of those keys will do it. And of course, you can add more of those. So what if it's else? So let's just put, this is going to be the tab feature is off. So if it's off, I want to reset those application dot on key. And then basically what this is we don't need to assign any macro. We just need to clear the macro that's been assigned. To do that, we just set no macro, and it'll set to whatever the default function is. So here, all we need to do is just write in tab. And the same thing here. So all we need to do is just copy this, meaning we're setting no macro. If we were going to set a macro, we'd add a comma procedure, but we're just going to use the default procedure. So that's it for this. That's all we're doing is turning it off and on. Now we're going to focus on this macro called next cell. That's the actually one that's going to perform the action. So sub next cell. So inside this next cell, I will need to dimension some variables. So the variables first is we need a tab list. And if you remember, on our admin, we have a tab list. So we're going to dimension our tab list as a string. So it's a list of all the tabs. And I also want an array. We'll use an array as a string because I want those in an array. I need to loop through all of those individual cells. So that's going to be a string also. And then we're going to dimension the I as integer, dimension the I as integer. And also I want the next index. I want to know which is the next cell that we're going to do. We're going to call that the next index as an integer. So those are two integers. Once I have those, I also want to know the sheet name. What sheet name are we on? We're going to mention the sheet name. Why is that important? At string, because I need to know if we're on a sheet that has a tab order, if it's inside that table in the admin. So we're going to mention the sheet name as a string, and I want to know the row, range row as log. Also, I just wanted to take a quick moment to share with you one of the best applications that I've ever developed for coders, called the Ultimate Developers VBA library. You can quickly and easily search for any macro of up to over 500 macros. You can also quickly and easily copy and paste any macro into your code in just a few seconds. If that wasn't fast enough, I've also integrated a very simple auto hotkey where you can use any shortcut keys to quickly automate your coding. You can also create your own macros, as many as you like. And that's the Ultimate Developers VBA library, and I'm going to include the links down below. Thanks so much. Just so we can refresh our memory here, inside the admin, I'm going to look here. If the sheet that the user's on is found, I want to know what row it's found on. So if I find the test sheet, if I know that it's on row 8, I'm going to look here to L, and I'm going to be able to extract all of those individual cells that we're supposed to automate the tab order through. But first I find the sheet in column K. So what we want to do is we want to have the sheet name. So here I've given it a named range. Take a look at this. If I highlight all these, we have something called tab sheets. So I'm going to look in tab sheets. Remember, this is a named range that I've pre-done. So if we just look in the name manager and we look at tab sheets, we see that it's just these individual cells that we're going to define. So I'm going to look in the range called tab sheets. I'm going to find the row, and then I'm going to be able to grab the string inside column L. So that's the next steps that we're going to do. So once I have that, I'm going to set the sheet name. So the sheet name is equal to the active sheet.name. So it's going to give us our name. So we have that. Now, as I mentioned, I want to find the row that it's on. So how do we do that? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use the find command. But if it's not found, it could create an error. So I'm going to wrap it around on error resume next and on error go to 0. So we're going to set the range row is equal. It's on the admin sheet. And what is the range that we're looking at? We're looking in that range called tab sheets. That's the one we were just talking about. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the find. I want to look for it. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for the sheet name. And I want to look at an Excel values and Excel whole. And what do I want to extract? I want to extract the row number. If it's not been found, we can exit the sub. So if the range row is equal to 0, then exit sub. And then if it is not, then what we're going to do is let's do message box and then range row. And we'll just run the macro. So basically all it's going to do, if we're on the employee manager, that employee manager is already found here on row 7. So we simply want it to return row 7. So I'm going to run this macro and it's going to tell us that it's on 7. Oops, Excel values. There we go, differences, just the row, not differences. So I want to extract the row here and it's going to tell us, there we go, 7. So we've got it on 7. So now that we know it's on 7, what do we want to do? I want to grab the tab list. Where's the tab list? We already know the row and we already know the column. So the column is already L and now we know the row. So we can extract the tab list. So here the tab list is equal to admin.range L and our range row dot value. So we have the tab list. So now we've got it. It's comma separated. We want to make sure there's no spaces. So this is our extract tab list. So once we have the tab list, what do I want to do? I want to split it up. Notice it's all in commas here. I want to split it into an array so that we can actually loop through each one. To do that, we're going to set it as an array. So we're going to use the array is equal to, once again, we're going to split it. And what am I splitting? I'm splitting the tab list. And I'm splitting it by what? I'm splitting it by commas. So now we've created an array. So next step, we are going to find, let's do a comment here, find where the active cell is in the list. So we want to look inside the active cell and we want to determine where it's been found. But if it's not found, it could create an error. So we're going to write on error resume next. So we're going to run a loop for I equals 0. Now, because this is an array, we're going to start out at 0 equals 0, 2, and we need to know the upper point of that array. It's the upper bound. So U bound, and we're going to use the array. So that's the upper part, and we're going to close our loop. Next, I. So now that we have our loop, we're going to go inside our loop. I want to look inside the specific array if the array, now we're going to look at that item, I, inside that, if it equals the active cell dot address, and I want to make sure that no rows. So I'm looking at that specific address, then it's found, right? So basically, we're just going to put it found active cell. So if it's found the active cell, and basically what that means is, let's say we're currently on E7. So if it's found, what do I need to do? If I'm currently on E7, we need to go to G7. So we just need to find the next one and then go to it. So basically select it. So how do we do that? Well, we can simply do that by calculating the next index. And if we're at the end, it will loop back to 0. So let's put it in a comment here. We'll say calculate next index, and then we'll just do loops back to 0 if at the end. So to do that, we're going to do the next index is going to be equal to I, which is the current one that we're on, plus 1. So we're simply just adding 1. We want to know the next one. Then we're going to use the mod of the U bound. So we're going to use the upmost one in case it's the last one. U bound, and then inside this here, I want to make sure that we're going through the array. So it's the last one here. Inside this, we're going to add 1. There we go. So now we have the next index. We've set the next index. We know which one it is. All we need to do is just select it. So range, I'm going to look inside that next index. So if we're on number 3 currently, we need to go to number 4. We've already defined we're on number 3, which is I. We're going to go to next number 4. So this is the next number. Now, if we're inside the array, it's going to tell us the next one. So whatever it is. And then we're simply going to select it. So that's going to select the cell. And then what we can do is we can exit the sub. We're done already. We found what we wanted. We've selected the next cell and we can exit. So basically, we're just going to loop through the array to see if the selected cell has been found. Now, if it's not, we're going to put a note here. If active cell isn't in the list, We're going to go to first cell. So this is kind of nice. It goes to the first cell if it's not found. So we do this, the range, so at the end of the loop, range array. Now inside this array, the first one is of course 0. So all I need to do is just select that. So we're going to select. So we're selecting it if it's not found. Otherwise, if it's found, we're going to exit the sub. So this is just kind of a nice feature. Very good. We're going to save our work so far. Now inside sheet 2, I want to automate this tab order. Now I want to automate if the user makes a selection within E5 through I7. So we're going to go directly on to that worksheet. That's sheet 2. And we're going to focus on a selection change event. When the user makes a selection change, that's when we want something to happen. And so to do that, let's go ahead and dimension our tab range as a range. Okay, so we're going to do it as a range. So what I want to do is I want to then set it. So here we're going to do set our tab range is going to be equal to range. And it's the range exactly that we just mentioned, which is E5 through I7, meaning if the user makes a selection change in that range, we want something to happen. To do that, we're going to write if not intersect, and we're going to focus on the target, and I'll explain this. Tab range is nothing. Then we want to do something. Now it's a little bit confusing. So what we do is we take not out, we forget this, and we forget nothing. And we look for if we've made a selection target inside this tab range, then we want to do something. So the user has selected a cell inside this range, we want to do something. So inside that, what we're going to do is we are going to determine if they've made the selection inside that, then what we want to do is we want to do manage tab and want to set it to true. Else, if they've selected something other than that range, we're going to turn it off. Manage tab false. So we're turning it off. We also want to turn it off when the user exits the sheet. So that's the worksheet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look for the deactivate, meaning when they exit the sheet, I want to make sure that the automated tab is turned off. So I'm going to paste it here. Now, when the user makes a selection inside this range, it should automate the tab. So let's do outside the tab. So if I hit enter, it's going to go down. If I hit tab, so we've got normal functions here. Inside the range, if I hit tab, it's going to go just to these individual cells. If I hit enter, it's also going to go to the right cells. Now, keep in mind that that is enter on the letters keyboard and not the enter on the number portion of the keyboard. So this is only focused on the letter portion of the keyboard. So for both tab and enter, it works great. So we see how that can work great. Now, why don't we put that into practice with a to range? So notice we've got two different ranges here. Inside our employee manager, we have the range here from H3 all the way through J20. And we've got another range here all the way from M3 through Q5. So let's go ahead and add that in. We're going to do something very similar. Now inside this employee manager, we already have some selection change events. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it down here. So inside this, we're going to say auto tabbing. And once again, we can do exactly the same thing. So why don't we just copy to save a little time? And we're just going to adjust the ranges. So we're going to look directly inside sheet 2. And I'm simply going to copy this. And then we're going to close this out. And we're going to paste it right down here. The only difference, of course, is our range. It's the ranges that we just mentioned. That first range, of course, is H3 all the way through J20. So we're going to use it on multiple ranges, H3 through J20. And I want a comma because I want to add into that. And inside this range is M3 all the way through Q5. So that's the range that we're going to add onto that. So that is M3 through Q5. So we've set the range there. So let's double check that to make sure. M3 through Q5. And that's correct. So now that we have that, what we're going to do is we're going to select inside here and we're just going to tab. And we see the tab or enter is now going to, and when we hit to this last notes area and we hit enter, it's going to automatically go up to M. So we see, and when we get to the end of the notes field, it's going to go back to the beginning employee name. So it's working awesome with both tab. And if we exit the sheet and we go to, let's say, another sheet, and we just tab here and we just hit enter, it's going to automatically update just like it would have before. So, we do need to add one more thing, which is the exit manage tab false. I also want to make sure that this worksheet deactivate. There we go. So we need to make sure that when we deactivate this sheet, we also must do manage tab false. So when I go to the employee manager, we see tab is working fine. When we go to the test sheet or any other sheet, it's automatically exited so we can tab out, enter. So it's working normally because we've deactivated. All right, very cool. This was a really cool training because we now have a really cool feature that allows us to automatically tab or enter between user entered fields very, very quickly with just a little bit of code. I hope you did enjoy this. Keep in mind that I've got some really great products, including the 400 workbook pack. That means 400 of my best templates I've got on a sale now, and a great deal. That not only includes 400 workbooks, but you get a complete template library, and each one has custom GPTs that are fully equipped to answer any questions about those templates, whether you're customizing, updating. It is literally the best template pack in the world. I hope you'll grab that. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.